Okay, pretty, isn't it? Can anyone hazard a guess as to what this is? Molten steel, no, but good guess. This is a metaphor, but it's also a microscopic perspective of a butterfly's wing. And this, to me, represents a lot of what you've been talking about today. You've been meeting with a lot of suppliers, and a lot of them are talking about the granular, the micro, personalized understanding of your customers, of their user journey, really intimate understanding. And that's really valuable stuff. You need to know intimate details of your customer's online journey. But I'm going to step outside the macro today, and I'm going to step into the macro. And we're going to talk a little bit about herd mentality. We're going to talk a little bit about the shared behaviors that we all carry out. Now, a lot of people have been talking about segment of one. Now, segmentation of one already exists. We have one segment. They're called human beings. And there are rules that apply to all human beings. And that brings me on to the topic of today's conversation, and it will be a conversation. It's going to be quite interactive. Heuristics and biases, or why we're all unique, but in exactly the same way. There we go. So when you're talking about people, when you're talking about mental processes, where do you look? Well, you look to the social sciences. You look back to the heydays of psychology back in the 1950s, 1960s, when they did really exciting experiments on people before moral and ethical considerations got in the way. You look at behavioral economics. Now, behavioral economics is a relatively new discipline, and it's taken economics and it's turned it onto its head. And it said, okay, economics is this is what people do in theory. Behavioral economics is this is actually what people do in real life. People aren't rational, you know. And you splatter a little bit of digital marketing in there. You bring all those theories from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and you bring them up to date. And I call that digital psychology. Now, digital psychology is really important, and it's important for this reason. See all this wet stuff that's flowing past? Again, this is a metaphor. That's technology today. You know, technology is changing. It's flowing past us at such a rate of knots, and the speed of change is increasing. It becomes increasingly difficult to have a grasp of exactly what's going on. I mean, I've just finished masters, 3-year masters. I guarantee everything, if I was to do it again now, it would all change because we're moving at that pace. So what doesn't change? What's the constant in this river of change? Well, it's him. Specifically, it's that bit there. Because whilst algorithms change, whilst technologies change, whilst social platforms change, the human brain stays relatively the same and has done for millions of years. You know, there's been occasional tweaks and evolutionary advances, but it's pretty much the same thing. So if we use the human brain as the starting point, that's the gateway to everything else. How our customers interact with technology, with social media, with each other, with us. We use the human brain, human psychology, as the gateway to understanding that behavior. Okay. Now, I talked a little bit about presentations about heuristics. What are heuristics? Heuristics are mental shortcuts, cognitive shortcuts. They're instinct, they're gut reaction. They're what you do when you don't have time to think. The mother of all heuristics is fight or flight. Yeah? You don't want to be stuck like this guy, caught in the headlights. You want to get the hell out of Kansas, or you want to go charging with your horns down. You don't want to be frozen. Quite often, thinking is suboptimal. And we think a lot less than we think we think. I used to ride a motorbike to work, and I would get on the motorbike. 45 minutes later, I would get off the motorbike, and I wouldn't remember a single detail of that journey. I'd switched onto autopilot. My reptilian brain, the unconscious part of my brain, kept me safe. Yeah? It was the one making the decisions. It was the one looking in my periphery vision, guiding me to work. And I'm sure you've all done that. You've sat in a car, switched off, and then got off at your destination. Got out at your destination. And there's a lot of heuristics. There's a lot of unconscious thinking that goes on here. This is from Wikipedia. It's a copy and paste. It's too small to even see. I only got up to M before I ran out of space. So there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of processes that we're not aware of. And heuristics really kick in moments of indecision, moments of pressure. Should I do this or that? I don't know. Heuristics kick in. And we're only going to look at 2 heuristics today. I'm talking quite fast because there's a lot to get into this, even with just 2 heuristics. We're going to look at one of the originally identified heuristics, anchoring and adjustment, and a little bit of an Etailcore first, exclusive. We're going to look at something called dissonance mitigation. So this is a new heuristic that I like to claim that I've discovered, but I've trademarked it. And this plays on cognitive dissonance theory. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, anchoring or adjustment. Back in 1974, these 2 chaps here, Tversky and Kahneman, basically invented behavioral economics. They sat down and we said, there's so much wrong with economists. What they're predicting isn't happening. How can we do it better? Let's look at the mental approaches, the behavioral approaches of real people. And they came up with 3 original heuristics. Anchoring was the first that they looked at. Now I'm going to do a live demonstration. It's a live experiment, so forgive me if it doesn't work. But everyone here should have a piece of paper with 2 questions on it. Yeah? Okay. Can you please answer the first question? Write it down on the piece of paper, if you'd be so kind. Just going to roll this over here temporarily. Apologies for getting in the way of the projector. Okay, now could you answer the second question, please? Nice and easy, no trick questions here. That's okay, write it down. I don't. Very good. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to call out for some answers from this side. I'm going to write them on here. I'm going to call out for some answers on this side, and I'm going to write them on here. So any volunteers? I'm dazzled here by the light, so can you put your hand up? Anyone want to give me a number for the second question? 10,000. Sorry? 10,000, and you're sitting on this side. Okay, can we have one from this side? James? You cheated. Okay, no cheats. Anyone who didn't cheat from this side, can I have a number? Sorry? 457? 457,000. 457. Okay, can we have another one from this side? That was pints. 150,000? Okay, and another from this side. Daniel? 4 million. 4 million. Okay, we'll do 2 more. One more from this side. Can't see you with the light. Hands up, somebody. At the back. 7,500. And finally, one more on this side. You know, we don't even need it. We can see what's happening here. These numbers are considerably higher than these numbers. Is that a fair, yeah? So we're talking millions, hundreds of thousands. Here we're talking tens of thousands, or simply just thousands. And as if by magic, we can predict that. We can say that the numbers on this side of the room are higher, and we can say that these numbers on this side of the room will be lower. Does anybody know how we've done that? Move this out of the way. The first question was different. Exactly. The second question was the same question. What is the fuel capacity of a jumbo jet 747? But the first question we asked on this side, is the fuel capacity more or less than 5,000 litres? On this side, we asked, is it more or less than 5,000 litres? Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, you have been anchored. And that's what anchoring is. It's about setting almost a decoy number. And this is an incredibly powerful tool. And it worked, which is great. Going back to Tversky and Kahneman, they demonstrated this incredibly well. So what we've done there is, fuel capacity, higher or lower, fuel capacity, give me a guess. So the 2 questions are quite well related. What if we were to take a Wheel of Fortune device, and everyone's seen Wheel of Fortune, you spin the wheel and clack, 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 it lands on a number. What if it's rigged? What if it can only land on 10 or 65? Yeah? And then what if we were to ask a question completely unrelated to the Wheel of Fortune? What if we were to ask how many African countries are there in the UN? Yeah? Now, there's no way that the Wheel of Fortune, the rigged Wheel of Fortune, could dictate any relation to the number of African countries in the UN, right? Ridiculous. Couldn't happen. Except it can, and it did. So on average, or mean value, when people landed a 10 on the Wheel of Fortune and then were asked the question about African countries, mean was 25%. They guessed that 25% of African countries are in the UN. When it landed on the 65, the mean value was 45%. So we're able to shift up the value, or the estimate, the guess, because it was a guess because no one actually knew, by 20%, just by spinning a rigged wheel. And there's two forces at play here. This is what we call contrast anchoring, and you could probably guess what I'm going to do here. Which circle's biggest? They're the same, aren't they? But we all know that that one looks bigger, doesn't it? And of course you're right, of course they're the same size. That's contrast anchoring, and that plays in parallel with something called assimilation anchoring. So yeah, some offline examples. We're going to move on to online in a minute. But when you go into a restaurant and you see at the top of the menu in the wine list, £1,000 bottle. Now the restaurateur isn't expecting you to buy that. What they're expecting you to do is go, wow, it's £1,000, 1, 2, 3, and buy the third most expensive bottle, because that looks reasonable by comparison to the 1,000 bottle. When you walk into Hermes, as you walk in the gateway, there's a £1.9 million platinum-plated handbag. You think that's ridiculous. Nobody's going to pay that much money for a handbag. But then you don't wince when you pay £100 for a white T-shirt, because as a contrast, it seems quite reasonable. There's a big thing in the States, and it's kind of moved over to the UK as well, where the $140 burger. If you were to walk into McDonald's and they tried to charge you $140 for a burger, you'd laugh and you'd walk straight out again, wouldn't you? Because the anchor point there is a low anchor point. It's the Big Mac. If you were to walk into a high-end restaurant and they tried to charge you £440, you'd still go, don't be ridiculous. But then you'd happily pay $30 or £30 for that burger, or a burger. And does it happen online? Well, it should do, and it does. So I don't know if anyone knows Wufoo. Online form product. So the first one, the ad infinitum. No one's going to buy that, $200. They don't want to sell that. And what's interesting, if you are going to use anchor products, if you're going to use anchoring in general, because we're Western, and most, we read from left to right, top to bottom. Everyone knows that. So place your anchors in the top left. Anchors should always be on the left-hand side. They actually want to sell carpe diem, or probably even bona fide. These guys here, can't actually remember what company it was, I took it as a screen grab. They're not even as subtle as Wufoo. They do not want to sell the max package. No, that's not got the profit margins. They even put it into the background. The one they want to sell is the premium package. They even call it the sweet spot. It's that unsubtle. So they're creating two decoy packages, two anchors, in order to sell the one they want. Are we really that gullible? So we're going to do another live experiment. Two beers. Beer A, beer B. Beer A, it's a nice beer. Better than beer B. Costs a little bit more, but it's probably worth it. It's a better quality beer. Show of hands, who would buy beer A? It's quite a few. And then beer B. A few again. So this is an experiment conducted at Duke University by Hoburn Puto. And they did this with students. Students got them free beer, they'll do any experiment. And the results to that were pretty similar to you guys. I'd say, to be honest, you probably had a few more here on beer A, but then I'd expect you guys to be earning more than students, so that compensates for it. But 66% of the students chose beer A, which means, by default, 34% chose beer B. Let's introduce a new beer. Let's remember these original stats, original percentages. So I'm going to introduce a cheap beer. Not a great beer, let's be honest, but it's there on the board. So now, who would choose beer A? Balls. Gone too fast. Hands, show of hands, see if it kind of corresponds. So beer A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Beer B, a lot more. And beer C, not a single person. Let's introduce beer D. Yeah? Beer D's a really nice beer. This stuff, oh, it's making my mouth salivate just thinking about it, but it's bloody expensive. Yeah? All right, now, who's going to buy beer D? 1, 2. Now who's going to buy beer A? Most people. And who's going to buy beer B? 1, 2. Okay, so we've gone up from 33%, 34%, we went up to 46% with the students. Very similar to you guys. 90% of students now want to buy beer A. This is the same beer all the way along. We've gone from 34% of them to 46%. We now hit 90% of them are buying beer A, all by introducing anchor products. Now, I know about this stuff. I've studied it. Surely I'm not susceptible to this. It's probably about 6 months ago now. I was driving my missus to Stansted Airport to drop her off to fly to Prague. Got to the entrance by the roundabout, and there was a signpost that said, quick drop off to the left, straight ahead, medium stay, long stay, car park to the right. I panicked. I didn't know which one to go for because I didn't know if I was going to be dropping off for a long time. I didn't know what the short stay was. Was it 5 minutes? Was it don't stop, push her out of the car and drive off? Was it 15 minutes? I didn't know. So I chickened out without even thinking about it really, and I went for the middle option. Yeah, I went for the product they wanted me to go for, and I ended up paying £18.50 for a 10-minute car park. And I've kept the receipt as evidence of that. It's one of those things you can think back on yourself and you're kicking yourself, but it's those moments of doubt when you're not consciously thinking through a decision. That's when it kicks in. So we're digital, we experiment, we test our assumptions. We have a product, Sodexo, company that I work for. It's Thames Dinner Cruises, and they have 3 packages. They have the high-level dinner package, which is romantic couples, quite expensive. You have lunch packages, which is basically families, and you have tea cruises, which is grannies. All of them very different price points. Now, we hypothesized that by introducing a completely new decoy package up to the top in the dinner cruises, we would get people to spend more money on the dinner cruise packages. We also had another hypothesis. We hypothesized that just by being exposed to this platinum package, is what we called it, people that were buying completely unrelated packages, tea cruises and lunch cruises, would also be influenced, and we would see their average spend per transaction increase. So 2 hypotheses. Hypotheses? Anyone know? You can see up the top, Platinum Dinner Cruise, £155 per person. That's quite expensive for dinner, even in London. And we made sure, like I said, customer journey, boom, 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 boom. But essentially, we try to expose as many people to that product as possible. It wasn't always possible. If over here, if I went straight to lunch cruises, it would have looked a bit weird. But if I did a calendar search, a date search, we made sure that that appeared right at the top. So what were the results of this one? Well, we saw an 11% increase in average spend per transaction on the dinner cruises. And that's once we'd taken out the results for the actual sales of the Platinum package. What was really interesting is the 2 unrelated packages jumped up 26% average spend per transaction. Because these were the cheap ones. These are the low-end packages. People were exposed to the £150 a package, and they went out and they actually spent a lot more on the tea and lunch cruises. Now, there's a side effect. There's a flip side to anchoring. If anyone reads the Oatmeal, or hasn't read the Oatmeal, it's a great comic strip. Read the Oatmeal. It's very observant. So we'll see Brokeback Mountain 3D, and we'll happily spend $13 or pounds or whatever it is. Yeah, absolutely. Give me a premium seat, popcorn and soda, bump it up to $20. We'll go to Star Boobs, in this case, and we will have ourselves a Frappa Latte Latte Chino with an extra squirt of syrup, and we'll happily pay like £8, £9 for it, whatever the price is, compared to what coffee used to be, which is 40p. We'll shell out a fortune for an iPad. buy one for his cat, so such good value. And we'll pay a fortune for all our mobile phone devices, our iPhones and our Androids. But then, when it comes to buying an app, when it comes to spending 99p on an app, we flinch. And that's because we've been negatively anchored. So Apple, in all their wisdom, said, you know what, we want to get as many apps out to our customers as possible. App developers are going to give them away for free. And that created an anchor in the public consciousness that says apps are not something you pay for. Fortunately, app developers are canny people. So they worked around the in-app purchases as a way of getting around that anchor. So everyone's happy, but potentially very risky for them. Now, before I move on to my second part, I don't know if you've been following social media. I have been promising to auction off a unicorn. So, who will give me £1 million for this unicorn? Come on, people, it's a unicorn. It farts skittles and rainbows. It's got to be worth £1 million. All right, £5. Who'll give me a fiver? Fiver, over there. Thank you very much. All right, bit silly, I know, but there's a serious point. If you bring a new product to market, something that's unique, something that people haven't seen before, the price point that you go to market with then sets that anchor in the public's consciousness. Yeah? So every iteration of that product, every iteration of your Me Too's, your competitors who steal your product, copy it, replicate it, that will be influenced by the original price point that you introduce. So think long and hard about that, because it's not just the initial product, it's every product that comes afterwards is going to be led by your first anchor point. Okay, how are we doing for time? We've got enough. So, dissonance mitigation. This is something quite new. Cognitive dissonance, which is where I've taken the theory from, isn't new at all. In fact, stems, there you go, Festinger, 1952, wrote a book on cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, I'll give you the official definition here, is a mental stress or discomfort experienced by an individual who holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values. Geek speak, that's cognitions. At the same time, it was confronted by new information that conflicts with existing beliefs, ideas, or values. In layman terms, it's a hypocrisy headache. Yeah? If you believe two alternative things, it's going to cause you anguish. It's going to mental pain to a degree. Some examples of where we might expect to see cognitive dissonance. Politicians. Not all politicians, I'm sure. But if you were to be espousing the values of the family and then going home and sleeping with your PA, you should experience dissonance, hypocrisy. Not everybody experienced dissonance to the same degree. So Professor Cialdini worked out that everyone has a scale of dissonance. 90% of the public are susceptible to dissonance. People like to be consistent. It's about 10% that don't get that hypocrisy headache. I'm not here to say that those 10% are all politicians, but there are people like that out there, so be careful. Smokers should suffer from dissonance, because we all know, let's be honest, that smoking is bad for you. Yeah? And yet we smoke anyway. Well, socially smoke. So how do we do that? How do we balance those two beliefs without giving ourselves huge amounts of hypocrisy headache? Well, we tell ourselves that smoking's not that bad. My dad smoked to 90 and he's fine. Or we smoke Marlboro Lights. Or we smoke Slims. Or we smoke a pipe. Or we smoke when we go to the gym. We can come up with lots of dissonance mitigating behaviours that reduce the headache. Talking about dissonance mitigating behaviours, quite an interesting one. So there's a study, I think it was Festinger, it might not have been, I have to admit. But people bought a new car, bought a shiny new red BMW. They've committed to that. They've decided that the shiny red BMW is the best car to buy. They've created a cognition, a belief. They then unconsciously avoided advertising for Mercedes, for Audi convertibles, any car that fell into the same category, in the same price range. If they weren't read through Auto Trader, they wouldn't even consciously see the adverts for these, because it would almost be like saying, well, you might be wrong. Maybe it's not the best car. Think about that. I don't want to see the benefits of a car I haven't bought. I want to see the benefits of the car I have bought. So I'm going to be mitigating any dissonance. So, we're e-commerce, we're e-tail. So what has this got to do with us? Well, there exists in this world such a thing as cognitive amplifiers. Yeah? These are things that enhance a cognition, make a belief stronger. A great example of a cognitive amplifier is evidence. You know, I might believe an elephant is a big grey mammal with tusks and a tail, but until I actually go and see an elephant in a zoo, touch an elephant, I don't truly believe it to the full extent. You know, but I'm standing there, wow, that really is big. That's cementing a cognition. Social proof is a great cognitive amplifier. Social proof. So if I have somebody in a group of my peers, people like me. No, it's less influential if somebody is very different to me. The more someone is like me, the more I believe it, the more concrete the cognition becomes. So if I have a group of friends in my age range, probably same gender, probably the same political affiliations, if they start telling me something, that's going to cement the cognition firmer than if someone I've never met before who has a different background to me, grew up in a different country, different gender, etc., etc. So back to the e-commerce aspect. Social media has a couple of doozies, a couple of great amplifiers. First and foremost, state, the act of writing. Now, if you leave a product review on a site, if you tweet about a product or a service, if you rate it in stars, that is cementing the cognition. It turns out that your grade 8 teacher, when they're getting you to write lines on the board, I will not do this, I will not do this, actually they're onto something. It works, it cements a cognition. A chap called Edgar Schein, back in the Korean War, was looking at Chinese prisoners of war. The Americans were the Chinese prisoners of war. And if you were captured by the Chinese back in the Korean War, you were very lucky because you were well looked after. But they were incredibly efficient at changing people's cognitions, moving them across to the Communist Manifesto, away from capitalism. And Edgar Schein was looking at this and he was trying to work out how they were doing it. And one of the techniques that the Chinese employed was getting the prisoners of war to copy out doctrine, communist doctrine, communist mantra, repeating it out time and time again. And that was a way of them changing the perceptions, changing the cognitions of the prisoners. They went one step further. It wasn't enough that they wrote these cognitions, these new beliefs. They then took them and then shared them with their peers. So the other prisoners of war, they said, look what he wrote. Yeah, it's his handwriting. And the act of sharing, which is what social media is all about, it's sharing information. That, again, is a cognitive amplifier. You know, a secret cognition, something that you've never told anyone, a belief that you have but you're not comfortable telling, that's a pretty flimsy thing. Once you put it out there in the open, you give it wings, you strengthen it. If you do want to quit smoking, I recommend you write it on a postcard. You state it 100 times, 100 different postcards. You mail those postcards out to your friends, families, and loved ones. Because by doing that, you're not only stating, you're sharing it, and you're cementing those cognitions. So, okay, it's a great hypothesis, but it's dated from 1952. Back it up with evidence, Andrew. Social media is a great cognitive enforcer. Is it? Well, a couple of months ago, I was walking around Sodexo HQ, giving out free flapjacks. 200 of the bloody things. And all I asked in exchange for that flapjack was somebody's email address. Now, gave me the email address. By the time they sat back down at their desk, they had a little email saying, can you click here and fill out this form for us, please? And all it was a review of the flapjack. How much did you enjoy it? How would you rate it price-wise? Except there were some conditions attached, because there were actually 4 different versions of that website, asking the customer to do one of 4 things, to carry out one of 4 actions. You can see this is what an experiment looks like in flowchart. So, given free flapjack, attributed to a condition, asked to rate the flapjack and carry out an action, and then rate the flapjack, and then leave it for 2 weeks. And then we fessed up and we said, guys, sorry, we lost your results. Would you mind filling it out one more time for us? Just the rating. You don't need to do any of that other stuff, but can you give us another rating because we lost it? I'm sorry. Bad us. What were the conditions? Well, we had the control condition, obviously, because we needed a benchmark. So the control condition was literally just, here you go, enjoy the flapjack, give us a rating. The state condition, write an anonymous product review within the website and just press submit. Don't publish it to Twitter, don't publish it to Facebook, don't publish it to LinkedIn, just press submit, and actually that just disappeared into a bin. You know, it's anonymous, you'll never see it again, don't worry about it. Third one, we put words into their mouths. We said, here you go, guys, here's a pre-written endorsement of the flapjack. Now go ahead and share it on your social media sites. Yeah? And the fourth one, write your own review, write your own endorsement for us, and then share it on your social networks, please. And we asked them to carry out these actions and then rate flapjack for us. Now, the rating, we called it perceived product value, PPV. And that was the likelihood of a repurchase, so how much people thought they were going to buy that flapjack again up at the staff canteen, and how much they valued the product. So we took those two together and we used that as our main metric. And the results, the initial findings. So, line here is the control. We're setting that to 0 as the benchmark. The auto share condition. I put this here. So this is the one where we give you a statement to put on your public social networks for us. It generated a 29% increase in perceived product value over the control. That's pretty substantial. People were willing to pay 29% or 29 times more likely, 29% more likely, to buy the product. By asking them to state, so just the act of writing how much they liked our product, our service, increased it by 32%. But when you put the two of them together, 37% increase in perceived product value. So this is customer loyalty here. These are people that are going to come back and buy your product and are willing to pay more for your product. So what does that mean for us? Well, the 37% is the important part. That's the most significant amplifier we've got out there. But what it means is that when you have social media reviews, they're not an acquisition tactic, because how they've been perceived in the past is purely acquisition. People write nice reviews, other people look at the reviews, they come and buy my product. More than that, so much more than that. They're actually a retention tool. People are more likely to buy your product again and again and again if they write a review of your product. It changes their perception of that product for the better. But we also did that 2-week, oh, I'm sorry, we lost the results thing. The delayed findings. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that cognitions aren't that sticky. They deteriorate fairly quickly. So the control condition dropped by 16% after 2 weeks. People forgot how much they loved our product. And across the board, people forgot how much they loved our product. Now, you know, the amplifiers still work. 15, 8, 14, so above the control condition, absolutely. And what's quite interesting here is it's kind of been flipped. So what was the lowest amplifier, 29%, it's now become the highest. And there's a reason for that. It's because people do not like having words put in their mouths. So we got quite a lot of kickback against that. People were refusing to complete the forms. People were refusing 2 weeks later to do it again. So we had very low kind of fulfillment of that condition after 2 weeks had gone. I will say that the people, the subjects that were still in the experiment, that still engaged with the experiment, they were incredibly loyal. Now, why is that? Well, they were also the most susceptible to this influence. There's a technical term, I won't call it a technical term, but let's just say if I was to form a cult, these are the guys I would want in my cult, because they're the ones that have the cognition sticking. They're the most suggestive. These other guys, the 8% and the 14%, it drops fairly quickly. Where is the love? People forget how much they love our product. They forget how much they love our services really quickly. That's just 2 weeks. So, what does that mean for you guys? Well, it means that if someone buys your product, someone writes a review about your product, you need to get in there really quickly to either get them to resell or commit to reselling in the future, building a relationship. At that point, because, like I said, people forget really quickly. There's too much noise out there. It's a term I've heard a lot. Positive promotion. Sorry, positive promotion, progressive promotion. You don't want to be amplifying negative reviews because that is going to have detrimental effects on your bottom line. What I'm suggesting by this is if you have your product, someone gets it, they receive it, fantastic. Ask them to rate the product 1 to 5 in the star form. Tiny piece of information. If they give you a 4 or a 5 stars out of 5, then you can then ask them a little bit more. Ask them to actually complete a written testimonial. When they complete that written testimonial, you can then ask them to share it, push it that one step further. So you're building commitment gradually, but you're only building commitment to the positive sentiment. If someone was to rate your product 1, 2, 3 stars out of 5, I'm not saying they would, I'm sure your products are absolutely amazing, but if they were, and you then asked them to publish a review about that product, it would be a negative review and it would it would cement a negative cognition. Avoid putting words into, people really didn't like this. People don't like having you write their tweets for them, taking ownership of their conversation. So avoid that if you can. Give them the free reins to write their own reviews. Most people do, absolutely, but I have seen competitions where publish this tweet for us and you'll win a prize. Well, the tweet has been pre-written by some guy in the marketing department. That is a big no-no. And this is quite interesting. This is something Edgar Schein found out, and quite a few other people. People don't like being coerced into committing to a cognition. Now, coercion isn't me walking around with a gun to someone's head going, you will write a product review. It can be a lot more subtle than that. Back to my shiny red BMW. If I were to offer a big shiny red BMW as a prize for writing and publishing a product review, that's coercion. You're telling someone the reason you're writing this product review isn't because you love my product, it's because you want to win a big red shiny BMW. It's not as powerful, considerably less powerful if you coerce people. You're far better to offer them very small incentives. 5% off your next purchase. That's small enough for them still to be leaving the review, endorsing your product because they like your product, not because they feel that they're going to get something big out of it. So that is quite important. I don't know how we are for time, but probably approaching. If you are interested in this stuff, and I hope you are, and I hope you found it interesting, 1952, Theory of Cognitive Dissonance. It's actually quite a fun guy, Festing. He writes with a good sense of humour. Dan Ariely, absolutely brilliant modern-day contemporary author, wrote Predictably Irrational. Highly recommended. You won't be able to put it down. It was at the Times bestseller list for, 30, 40 weeks. Going back to the 1980s, Robert Cialdini, Influence, Bible of influential techniques. Try and take his interpretations and apply them to modern context, digital context. And then if you really like the academic stuff, the heavy stuff, I recommend Kamenon and Tversky. It is heavy going though, so if you want to put yourself to bed at night, get a copy of that, download it. There we go, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you think digital psychology is worth pursuing. If you do have any questions, I have two personas. I have a Sodexo persona, I have a digital consultancy persona. I'm here in the digital consultancy persona. The Guku is my company. Tweet me any questions, email me any questions. I love this stuff, I enjoy this stuff. I will be there to help you if you are curious as well. But how much time have we got left? Do we have? None? None? Okay. Two questions. Does anyone have any questions? Hey there. Oh, sorry, got.
Excellent presentation, thank you very much. Very interested by the review system and asking customers to give a star rating, if they give it a 4 or 5, encourage them to add a description and share. If you're a marketplace, say if you're Amazon, does that work against you having very few negative reviews? So will people look at that and actually not believe it, or does it I suppose affect its credibility if you're only
if you have too many reviews? Or
no, so if people see a product on, say, Amazon, and there's a lot of 4 and 5 star reviews with descriptions, but then they get down to the 1 and 2 star reviews and there's no description, is it a bit obvious that you're going out of your way to hide those reviews?
So absolutely fair point, but what we're talking about is the publishing on other people's social media, so not necessarily publishing it on your own site. Publishing a review on your site, if you're amazon.co.uk, is great, but it's not necessarily going to mean you're exposed to your friends and family, because most of your friends and family won't see that review. So it's kind of taking it outside of the context of the purchasing medium, whether that may be your own site or Amazon, and it's promoting it furthermore. So we did it at Sodexo. We use mystery shopping services. If you buy a product, you get an email. And that email will ask you to rank our product. And again, we say if you get a certain score, if you get a certain NPS, we then ask them to commit to a written review and then ask them to publish it. None of that appears on the website. Potentially it should. But the intention there is to just generate loyalty rather than generating more sales through the website, if that helps.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Anyone else? Cool. Okay, well, thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed that, and have a safe journey back. Thank you.